On the same day, Sean Diddy Combs was denied bail by another federal judge again. He was slapped with another lawsuit, this one for $10 million. The plaintiff in this case is a friend of Combs' ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, and she's seeking $10 million in damages from the embattled music mogul. Fashion designer and photographer Bryana Bongolan, also known as Bana, filed her lawsuit last week in Los Angeles Superior Court, accusing the Bad Boy Records founder of sexual battery and dangling her off a 17th-story balcony. The balcony incident was briefly mentioned in Cassie's now settled federal lawsuit against Combs. However, she didn't mention her friend by name. The singer claimed in the middle of her 29th birthday, Combs pressured her to leave a party to go to a freak-off. According to Cassie's lawsuit, after the freak-off, she and Combs went back to the hotel room where Cassie's friends were already hanging out. Cassie alleged the mogul was severely intoxicated and at one point picked up her friend like a child and dangled her off the 17th-story balcony of the hotel suite. Cassie and her friends were terrified by Combs' behavior, but according to the suit, she was so heavily sedated by the drugs she took to participate in the freak-off that she was unable to respond to the terrifying behavior. Now, a little more than a year after her jaw-dropping lawsuit was filed and settled within a day, we're learning more details from the incident in Bongolan's lawsuit. According to court documents obtained by Rolling Stone, the incident happened on or about September 26 of 2016. Bongolan says she became close with Cassie 2 years prior while the two worked together at an LA store in 2014. And through Cassie, that's how Bongolan met Sean Combs. According to the suit, she believed Combs could offer once-in-a-lifetime opportunities to collaborate with him and his business, but she claims it only led to terror and abuse at his hands. She claims she began to see disturbing signs of an abusive relationship between Cassie and Diddy, including the mogul allegedly calling Cassie's phone repeatedly if she didn't answer his calls, and showing up unannounced to her apartment while accusing others of trying to sleep with his then-girlfriend. According to the lawsuit, there were several instances she saw Cassie covered in bruises or with a black eye, which Cassie said allegedly came from Combs. But Bongolan claimed she was present during an explosive fight where Combs allegedly threw a large kitchen knife at Cassie, who, while acting in self-defense, threw one back at him. Bongolan claims the Bad Boy Records founder then began directing his rage at her. She claims during a photo shoot for Cassie, Combs allegedly cornered the fashion designer and was inches from her face and threatened her. He allegedly told her, "I'm the mother effing devil. You have no idea what I could do to you. I could kill you." Bongolan reportedly took that threat seriously. According to court documents, she knew firsthand that the producer was a violent man, referencing what she had seen in the relationship between him and Cassie, as well as learning that Combs was allegedly responsible for blowing up rapper Kid Cudi's car for being interested in Cassie. Bongolan also claimed she had heard rumors Combs had once skinned a rival's dog. According to her lawsuit, everything culminated around September 26 of 2016. Bongolan says she and her girlfriend were sleeping over at Cassie's LA apartment. She claims she woke up to Combs violently shouting and banging on Cassie's front door. Bongolan says she told her girlfriend to hide in the bathroom and lock the door. And Combs allegedly barged into the apartment while Bongolan was on the apartment's balcony. She claims Combs grabbed her and groped her breast as she tried to fight him off and yelled at him to leave her alone. Combs then allegedly grabbed her by the armpits and lifted her up on the banister of the 17th floor balcony and repeatedly yelled, "Do you know what the F you did? Do you know what the F you did?" She says she struggled to get back on the ground and claims she was overpowered by Combs as she only stood about 5 feet tall, weighing less than 100 pounds. According to the suit, he immediately lifted her up higher and higher over the 17th floor balcony, with Combs' grip keeping her from falling to her death. She says Cassie, who was locked in her bedroom, ran out onto the balcony and screamed at Combs to stop, and told him Bongolan's girlfriend was also in the apartment and could overhear what was happening. The lawsuit claims that because Combs recognized that there were so many witnesses to the assault, he pulled Bongolan back over the balcony. But he didn't release her. Bongolan says in a last fit of violence, the mogul slammed her onto the balcony's patio furniture, including a table. According to the suit, Bongolan's attorney says, quote, "The only purpose of dangling someone over a balcony is to actually kill them or to intentionally terrorize them and rob them of any concept of dominion over their own bodily autonomy and safety." Miss Bongolan refuses to allow this fear to control the rest of her life and brings this action to demand that Mr. Combs takes responsibility for the trauma he intentionally and maliciously inflicted. Meanwhile, as Combs sits in a federal detention center in Brooklyn, New York, he denies Bongolan's allegations. According to his lawyers, anyone has the right to file a lawsuit, regardless of the evidence they may or may not have. Since last year, Ms. Bongolan has expressed an intention to sue Mr. Combs and has sought legal representation to pursue her claims. Mr. Combs firmly denies these serious allegations and remains confident they will ultimately be proven baseless. Another Sean Diddy Combs lawsuit, and of course, lots to break down. I'm joined by criminal defense attorney Safa Robinson Ferrer. Safa, always great to see you. There's a lot of terrifying details in this lawsuit. While Combs denies the allegations, what's your reaction to Bryana Bongolan's claims?
They were very shocking to an extent, but in other ways, very not surprising here. This lawsuit echoes a lot of the claims that we've heard throughout the country and throughout the past year of allegations of violence by Mr. Combs or at the hands of Mr. Combs to other individuals. I think what's interesting about this particular case is that this individual is allegedly a friend of Cassie Ventura, Mr. Combs' ex-girlfriend. So in my mind, as I'm listening to this, I think this lawsuit may have a little bit more teeth than some of the others do, considering the nature of the relationship between the individuals, and that this third party person or witness, assumingly witness, would be Ms. Ventura, who previously filed a lawsuit against Mr. Combs alleging violence and settled that case about a year ago at this point. So this one I think is certainly heightening with respect to the allegations again, but who the individual is that's filing suit here. And this is someone that is in some way has been connected to Mr. Combs directly.
We're only scratching the surface of this shocking lawsuit against Sean Diddy Combs, but I want to quickly thank our amazing sponsors that help continue to bring you these stories like Upside. You might be asking yourself, what's Upside? Well, it's a free app that gets you cash back on daily essentials like gas, groceries, and restaurants. Sometimes I only have time for a quick lunch, but there are times where I can have a nice sit down at a restaurant and I can use Upside for both. Plus, I can use Upside to get cash back when I do. It's so easy and so simple to use and completely free, so why not? It's actual real cash back too. It's money that appears in your Upside app that you can transfer straight into your bank account. So here's what you do. You download the Upside app, claim an offer for whatever you're buying on Upside. You pay as usual using a debit or a credit card and follow the steps on the app and get paid. You can use Upside at places like Dunkin' Donuts, Chipotle, 7-Eleven, Taco Bell, and so many other places. So why not check it out and see if your favorite spot is on the app. To find out how much you could earn, click the link in the description to download Upside or scan the QR code on your screen, use our promo code LCNews and get an extra 25 cents back on every gallon on your first tank of gas. Again, that's promo code LCNews for an extra 25 cents back on your first gallon of gas. And this lawsuit's also interesting because this was an incident that we've heard of before. It was in Cassie's now settled federal lawsuit against Combs. But one thing that stood out to me was the differences in the dates. Now, in Cassie's lawsuit, she claims that the incident took place in 2015 at a hotel suite. In Bongolan's lawsuit, she claims it happened in 2016 at Cassie's apartment. But Cassie claims she was heavily sedated because of the drugs she took to participate in the freak-offs. Do the locations and the dates make any type of difference when it comes to these lawsuits?
They're absolutely going to make a difference. One of the things that they're going to have to prove or show is on a particular time, date, and place, and at a particular location, these things occurred. And if there's conflicting stories or if there's a conflict between the dates, much more significantly, years that we're discussing and locations, that's definitely going to be something that either the jury is going to pay attention to if it makes it to trial, or that's certainly going to be what we call an issue of fact that is ultimately going to have to be determined at some point. This is certainly going to go to the credibility of the plaintiff's case here. And one of the things that will be viewed is, the time, the date, and the place. And if ultimately the evidence can show that on that particular occasion, this occurred. Now, maybe something in Cassie's lawsuit or prior lawsuit might come up and negate that. Miss Ventura could ultimately be a witness on this case if this case made it to trial as well.
And how significant could these claims be, especially in Combs's federal trial? Do you expect Bongolan could be called as a witness in this case by the government?
Absolutely. Anybody that is connected to Mr. Combs is fair game to the prosecution in this case. Particularly here in Mr. Combs' federal indictment, we have still who is victim one. We don't know who victim one is as of yet. However, we can assume or possibly assume that it is Miss Ventura. And if Miss Ventura is a witness and she's cooperating, there are other individuals who are close to Ventura who can also attest to the acts or the allegations that Mr. Combs allegedly had done to her, or physical acts of violence that were allegedly done. Then this individual, Miss Ventura's friend, the stylist, could certainly be used as a witness on that federal case.
And kind of going back to what you had mentioned before, do you think that this lawsuit could be particularly damaging for Combs, especially since the plaintiff in the case was a close friend of Cassie and claimed to have witnessed several instances of physical abuse? And kind of continuing with that, a lot of these lawsuits at this point, even though they're filed by different attorneys across the nation, they do kind of mimic one another in the sense of this power that Combs kind of allegedly exuded when it came to these alleged victims. And in this case in particular, I think the power and the fear of any type of retaliation or even physical abuse from Bongolan's claims. What do you kind of make of that in totality of now the 30 lawsuits, civil lawsuits that we're seeing that have been filed by Combs that are still open?
And to my point that I said earlier, as an attorney who's listening to and viewing these allegations, Miss Bongolan's case has a bit more, teeth with respect to her case and allegations. And it's not to minimize the importance of everybody else's lawsuit, but she is directly connected to Cassie Ventura, who was the girlfriend of Mr. Combs. We know that there's been violence that has gone on between those individuals. So in this particular case with Miss Bongolan, this kind of heightens things in the sense of, this isn't somebody random who just pops out of the woodworks and says, hey, these allegations occurred. This is someone who's had a long-term relationship. And so this certainly in my mind stands out among the other lawsuits and can certainly go towards the prosecution's theory and case on their federal prosecution. And ultimately, however this is going to play out in Ms. Bongolan's case, whether or not there's going to be a finding in her favor.
And as I mentioned, Combs still faces a staggering amount of lawsuits, about 30. Do you see a chance any of them are litigated anytime soon?
I don't think they're going to be litigated anytime soon. I think the federal case is taking the front seat, and it certainly will. At this point, I think there's a trial that's set for May. It could stay that date, or it can certainly be postponed to a later date in 2025. But that is the first things first for Mr. Combs' attorneys, and ultimately in the legal system, those are the cases that are more important and crucial to handle first because an individual is being deprived of their liberty. So this case is certainly going to go first. This case is going to be handled before those civil suits even see a trial date.
And what do you make of Combs' team's response to this lawsuit? He's denied all the allegations made in every lawsuit filed, even Cassie's lawsuit, but then had to kind of do an about face when the CNN video was leaked of him abusing Cassie and even had to issue an apology. But in this suit, his lawyers once again firmly deny the accusations. What do you make of kind of this denial? But yet this was something that was brought up in the past last year as well, too. What do you make of Combs' team's response to all of these lawsuits?
Mr. Combs' team is certainly doing their job. It's their job to protect their client and ultimately to deny the factual allegations until they are found as facts by a judge or a jury. So Mr. Combs' team is doing exactly what they should be doing, protecting their client's interests, denying the allegations, and they are obligated to do that in representing their client until there are issues that are tried in a court of law ultimately. So they're doing their job here. It's not a surprise as to how they're addressing or responding to these things. They will deny each and every allegation that is made against Mr. Combs as long as they're representing them or representing him, because that is essentially what their job is to do, is to protect their client, protect their interests until somebody, an arbitrator or a judge or a jury, is to make that decision.
And in your opinion, why do you think the lawsuit was filed now, and also kind of a significant date as well too? This was the same day that Combs was denied bail yet again by another federal judge. But why do you think, after the claims were made in November of last year in Cassie's settled lawsuit, that it took over a year for this lawsuit to come out?
I think that things are ramping up in the litigation against Mr. Combs, specifically on the federal end. we're going to see a lot more lawsuits, a lot more court appearances, a lot more exchanges of information and filings as that case starts to now take a life of itself. But one of the things that often happens as cases progress, and unfortunately, these civil cases can impact the federal cases to an extent, but there's leverage that's mounted. And right now, this case is a piece of leverage that will be mounted against Mr. Combs, which I think is consistent with the timing, is now things are going to continue to come forward. If Ms. Bongolan is a witness against Mr. Combs in the federal indictment or in the federal case, then there is the possibility that she consulted attorneys. And as a former prosecutor, we always know that when an individual has civil suits or things of that nature against them, we can often use those as leverage against that individual. So it's not a surprise to me here that this is the time that this lawsuit is filed and who is ultimately filed it.
All right, Safa Robinson Ferreira, thank you so much for your insight and your time as we, continue to talk about all things Sean Diddy Combs. Before we sign you off, Diddy was denied bail again right before the holiday. Does that come as a surprise to you?
Absolutely not. I don't think anybody truthfully in their heart of hearts thought that, or at least in the legal system, that Mr. Combs could have been seeking bail or would have gotten out on bail. There's certainly, a question of whether, he's a risk of flight. There's certainly a question of whether or not, he's a threat to the community or any witnesses that could ultimately testify against him. So I think in the abundance of caution and in the continued abundance of caution, his applications for bail are unfortunately going to be denied for him.
All right. Again, Safa, thank you so much for your time and your insight. I always appreciate you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
In addition to Sean Diddy Combs still facing a staggering amount of civil lawsuits, which he has denied all allegations, he has pleaded not guilty to charges of sex trafficking, racketeering, conspiracy, and transportation to engage in prostitution. His federal criminal trial is slated for May of next year. Reporting for Law and Crime, I'm Elizabeth Millner.